Welcome to Running the Table, the podcast where we run through everything on the table in the world of college basketball. Heart Attack Central. What a game, what a win for the Boilers over the number 7 Nebraska Cornhuskers. But without further ado, let's run it. This game ends final 80 to 77 in overtime in Lincoln, Nebraska. Oh boy, so many emotions, an amazing first half, the slow grind, the slow crumble, watching the score just go closer and closer until I thought it very well could have been all over right there at the end of regulation, but a missed free throw leaves Purdue alive, just enough for us to be able to pull away in overtime. This is crazy. There's so much to talk about, so I'll try to keep this from being an insanely long recap. But to start off, I want to go over a little bit of a Nebraska overview since I'm going to talk mostly about Purdue throughout the entirety of this. Big highlights would be their essentially top three scorers, starting off with Rink Mast, who, I mean, if you have seen Nebraska at all this year, you know Rink Mast as a bucket. He's had some illnesses and things kept him out recently, but he was back in pretty much full form. He finished with 18 points on 6 of 13 shooting, 4 for 7 from 3, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. So 18, 6, and 7 is wild. He did foul out, and that was pretty critical because I really don't know what that would have looked like in overtime if they had been able to have Rink Mast as well. They still obviously looked good. Behind him was Jamarcus Lawrence, who put up 16 points on 6 of 9 shooting, 2 for 3 from 3, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, but 4 turnovers. Overall, very efficient offensive game for him, but the 4 turnovers for him were a little bit rough. And usually, I believe their leading scorer outright or second leading scorer behind Mast, you had Price Sanford, who I believe averages 17 points per game. He had 15 in this one on 4 of 12 shooting, just 2 for 9 from 3, 5 for 6 from the free throw line, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 2 turnovers. We did a really good job limiting Sanford early. He started to catch fire with the rest of the team in the second half. And he was a big difference maker on getting them back in the game, as well as those other two guys mentioned. Nobody other than those three reached double figures for Nebraska. But overall, they put up an insane second half to make this a game, and we'll get into that as we talk about the game as a whole. But those three guys, very elite, and I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention Sam Hoiberg, 8, 5, and 5 with a steal and a turnover. He is, as always, a glue guy for that team. It just does so much of the little things well. But let's start at the beginning of this game. Purdue goes on an electric 14 to 1 start over the first couple of minutes. And that was a wild way to start. And you could tell the energy that Purdue was starting out with an immediate offensive rebound on the very first possession. Then, of course, you get, Clough with an opening layup for Purdue. Braden and Fletcher each get two threes to help us open up to that 14 to 1 lead in just 3 minutes and 15 seconds into the game. We started 4 for 6 from 3. That becomes relevant later as we start talking about these 3-point numbers because unfortunately the efficiency did not hold up, but that start allowed us and it spurred us to that electric first half we were able to have, even if we couldn't keep up that level of efficiency throughout. After that, Nebraska did settle in a little bit. We stopped being completely lights out, but our offense did definitely keep rolling for the most part. They cut the lead back as far as 7 points before we re-extended it out to 17, courtesy of a 9-0 run in the middle of the half, and we went into the half up 16. Overall, for starting 14 to 1 in the first 3 minutes, ending the half at 40 to 24 speaks great volumes to our defense. Yes, they were kind of just not necessarily hitting open shots. They were cold, and I think we could have definitely we've had way better halves, even without an electric start like that, and gotten more than 40 in the first half. So we certainly came down to earth a little bit. But overall, we were doing a lot of things really well. We were being aggressive. We were being, quite frankly, just the aggressors on both sides of the ball. We were getting the shots we wanted. The shots we wanted weren't falling. That continued throughout the course of the game. Defensively, we were taking it to them. We were making them uncomfortable, pushing them out of their initial actions, trying to, not letting Sanford especially. Sanford did not get a ton of, in rhythm open shots in that first half. We started to give them a little bit more in that second half. But that first half specifically, we just made life difficult on them, and it showed. Only 24 points for a team that not only shoots the ball really well most of the time, but especially at home. Nebraska always seems to be lights out at home. So that was a really comforting first half. But I could tell you, I was sitting there at halftime like, we still got another 20 minutes. I know just what this Nebraska team is capable of. I watched them live be down 16 at Indiana and come back and win that game. I think that was won it in regulation. It didn't even take overtime. I know just how fast these guys can get hot. And lo and behold, it was a slow burn, but they cut it all the way back. They're a second half team. We know that. I think a big part of the reason why things got shaken up both on for us offensively and quite frankly them offensively or us defensively was firstly they changed up the ball screen coverage on Braden. They blitzed him slash hard hedged him quite a bit more and just more efficiently. They cut off a lot of his quick passing lanes, so he wasn't able to get as many of those quick easy dish outs like he was in the first half or some of those assists that he was able to find, whether it wasn't TKR because TKR didn't get a shot in the first half, which is wild in its own right. But some of those duckins from Clough, various cutters, things of that nature, we weren't really able to get that. As well as the fact that one of the things they limited really well was Braden's ability to split the ball screen. He was doing a great job in the first half, at least maybe two or three times, taking those ball screens. They tried to hard hedge him outside, and he just split it. He went right through, and then of course, that opens up the world around him in terms of kicking out for a three, or a dump down underneath, or even a shot of his own within the mid range, or getting all the way to the basket. But in the second half, the way they disrupted us, it speaks directly into what Nebraska tries to do on defense. They started to do a better job of run their defense and push you to where they want to be. And they want you to shoot threes, which against Purdue seems like it could be a bad idea. But the shots weren't falling. We were getting good shots, whether it was, still in that man-to-man breaking it down, kickouts, one more open three, or maybe lightly contested three. Or there were various times where they went into their 1-3-1 zone defense, and then it's like you struggle to get any shot other than a three because you break it through the center there, and then the main things that are open are kicks to the corner. Open corner three. Now we hit multiple. We hit plenty. I know CJ got at least one, maybe two corner threes. I think it was probably one. I know Fletch got at least one corner three there in the second half, I believe. And even if we didn't get that, that opened up the game for the one mores, things of that nature. But it meant that we were shooting a lot of threes. And the way that Nebraska gets you is they're banking on the fact that that's not going to be enough for their offense to overcome, or it's not going to be enough for you to outscore them that way unless you shoot the ball really, really well. And at that high of volume on three, not a lot of teams will shoot to the efficiency numbers that you may see on the stat book, averaging per game because it's volume. It's more than they're used to shooting. And lo and behold, it kind of worked. They kind of flipped the script a little bit. And for them on the offensive end was they broke us down way better. They were no longer taking a bunch of, contested threes or, just relying on rink masked one-on-one in the post against Clough and see what he can go and get. Some, those tough shots in the mid-range. They got our defense moving. They put us in more ball screens and got us rotating. They caught us sleeping a lot of back cuts, a lot of, when they got the ball moving a lot more in some of those rotations, it allowed them to just blow by after one of them. You worry about the three, so you hard close out, and they just blew straight by us, getting into the lane. So they found their efficiency in their offense by first getting into the lane. And then when we were forced to adjust that, that was when they started getting the open threes. That was when you get the kick out to Price Sanford money. You find Sam Hoiberg in the corner, money. Rink mast on the wing, kick out, pump fake, we fly by, step to the side, wide open three, bang. That's where the offense really got going for them, and they put up 44 second half points because of it. They cut that 22-point lead that we built in the second half because it was 16 and a half. We built it all the way up to 22 in the first couple of minutes of the second half. And they cut it to just 5 by the 7-minute mark. And it was a dogfight the rest of the way. But we responded, and that's something that Nebraska's kind of known for at times is they'll go on big runs, but they won't necessarily hold it for, the entirety of a half. So they went on a big, relatively quick run, say 10, 12-minute run, but then they kind of ran out of steam a little bit. We responded, Benter three, Cox three, TKR short roll floater, another Cox three, two Benter free throws, and we got the lead all the way back up to 14 with 2 minutes and 45 seconds left. Was it safe? Hell no. Because here's the problem. Right after that, missed three, missed three, missed three, turnover, missed free throw on the front half of a one-on-one, Braden. One for two from the free throw line, Clough, I believe, and missed both free throws with CJ Cox there towards the end. Whew. That is unfortunately not how you close games. Mainly, especially, I'm not going to blame the missed shots. Again, we were still getting the shots we wanted, but the missed free throws is brutal. And we'll talk about the percentage here in a little bit, but in those games, in these tough, hostile environments, you have to be able to lock in just a little bit more, especially our good free throw shooters. I'm looking at you, Braden and CJ. Braden, we got to have at least one of those two. CJ, we got to have at least one of those two. CJ at least got both, but Braden, man, that first one, missing the front half of one-on-one always hurts, especially in close games, especially when you're trying to stifle runs. And that led us, all the way to the final minute there where we were up one and Rink Mast gets that offensive rebound, put back, and one. Or no, they were down two because that bucket brought them level at 68 apiece. And then, I mean, my heart sank because Rink Mast is a good free throw shooter. If I'm not mistaken, I think Rink Mast is an 80+% free throw shooter. Rink Mast is on the season, 81% free throw shooter. Doesn't miss very many. And in his home arena, he missed the go-ahead free throw with seconds remaining. I don't remember exactly how many, but it was seconds remaining. And we had a chance to win it, and unfortunately, Braden's shot didn't go, so we head to overtime. We found our offense a little bit in overtime, so we kind of, stifled the cold streak that we had there to end. We started +4, which put us up, I believe it was 72-68 to start overtime. They got a bucket back, and then CJ knocked down another three to give us a 5-point lead. Problem was they went down back-to-back possessions. They tie it right back up. We still struggle. They go up two with a minute and a half left in overtime, and Clough got to the line, and his free throw put us down one heading into the final possession. And this was just another crazy moment. Talk about the one to end regulation, this one to end OT. Lawyer gets a pretty open three, misses. Braden ends up with the offensive rebound, pump fakes. I know some people thought he could have gone up right then and there. I could kind of understand getting an offensive rebound and as a point guard immediately going back up with the floater. It's a weird motion. I think his instinct was try to get the defense to pay attention to him, see what happens. So he pump faked, kicked back out to Fletch, and Fletch immediately goes and starts his drive. When he put that ball on the deck, I was really worried we were going to get one of those off floaters, maybe trying to get to the rim and essentially hoping and praying for the foul with just kind of throw up at the backboard. But all credit to Lawyer. He stopped. He realized he wasn't going to get anything clear off pump fakes and gets a rather difficult pass around to Clough. I believe it was a chest pass. It wasn't a bounce pass. Clough had a great seal on Buttigieg, is able to catch it, turn, and with the left hook, game on the line, one of the biggest games of our season on the line, especially for Big Ten title hopes, puts it up with the left hand, foul, and one. Now, unfortunately, so that did put us up one. Unfortunately, he did miss the and one free throw. I really was hoping that he could at least get that to be two, so that way they were forced to try to take a three if they wanted to go for the win. He misses. CJ Cox gets in there for an offensive rebound, but it's a jump ball. Ball goes to Nebraska. Then let's get I want to dive just a little bit into this final play of the game for Nebraska because there's been a lot of discourse about it, at least that I have seen. Not much on the broadcast, which I think was a bit surprising, but plenty on YouTube, Twitter/X afterward. They go to inbound the ball. Jamarcus Lawrence makes a run across the floor towards Purdue's bench to try to catch it in stride and go down the sideline to get up some type of shot in the couple of seconds they had left. They had enough time, I think it was 4.1 seconds, to run down the floor and try to get up a, reasonable shot, kind of within the half court. He catches, tries to plant his foot to turn and slips entirely. He never got a good foot down there. Nothing was said on the broadcast at the time. I don't know if they just didn't see anything, but Nebraska Athletics has since come out with a statement saying that they are looking into potential items or an item thrown at Purdue's bench, I believe, during that last timeout after the free throw before that final possession. There's a lot of talk. There is a lot of speculation. I believe it was former Purdue player Ryan Smith who came out on X/Twitter afterwards and said there was a can/cup that was very clearly thrown at Purdue's bench after, during that timeout. And lo and behold, right at about the spot where Purdue was holding that huddle in the timeout was where Jamarcus Lawrence slipped. Um, as far as I'm aware, Purdue has no, team obligation to, have their assistants or their staff go and, mop up anything specific there. As far as I'm aware, it's a stadium thing for the little mop boys at the end of, each baseline to clean up any spots on the floor for, charges, sweat, stuff like that, as well as timeouts. I think. Don't quote me on that. I think. It was slippery in some way, shape, or form. It's hard to tell how much of it was caused by actual liquid versus he was kind of trying to step really aggressively, and it almost looked like he stepped more with the side of his foot than with the actual, ball of his foot, which could have caused the fact that he just kind of slid along the side and never got a solid foot under himself. But either way, honestly, a disappointing way for that one to end, just because, I mean, it's, for me sitting there with a heart rate of 130, it was relieving that there was zero chance of a miracle shot, but at the same time, that much of a battle, that close of a game between two top 15 to top 10 teams, it deserved a better ending than that. But either way, that was a wild way to end, and we will see if there's anything more that kind of comes from that. Um, but if that's true, and a Nebraska fan threw that, I can't imagine a Purdue fan would throw it at their own bench. So I'm gonna guess if that was a Nebraska fan that threw that, that's a tough way to eliminate your team's chance of, you know, any type of shot there at the end of overtime. But regardless, I want to move on to some of the individual stats in this game. We had all four out of our five starters in double figures, that being Braden, Fletcher, CJ, and Oscar Clough. Um, I'll actually start off without talking about any of those guys because Trey Kaufman-Renn was not a scorer in this one, but this is one of the best games that I've seen from him ever, at least this season, in terms of the way he looked, his poise, his seniority. He was battling out there, and despite, whatever fouls, how many times he got knocked down, whatever time he got fouled, level-headed. This is about as level-headed as I've seen Trey while he's been battling out there. He ends this game with just 6 points on 3 of 5 shooting, 0 for 1 from three. Wasn't so sure about that three, but it just kind of happened in the course of the game. 19 rebounds, 16 of them on the defensive end. 16. That was nasty. Combined with, 2 assists, 2 turnovers, he had 3 offensive rebounds, 16 defensive rebounds. Whew. That's the difference maker. In 2 games, I saw the stat, in 2 games that Purdue has been away against a top 10 team, this game and the Alabama game, his first game of the season, he is averaging 17 rebounds a game, 19 in this one, 15 at Alabama. He stepped up in a major way and helped us completely dominate the glass. Because the way that this game went, we needed every single one of those rebounds. And across the team, we needed every single one of those rebounds, and we rebounded the hell out of the ball. Quite frankly, the best team rebounding effort I have seen this season. And granted, for the defensive rebounding side of things, Nebraska is not a heavy offensive rebounding team. They don't really crash the glass. They're not a huge team. Buchtengel is, he's tall enough. I want to say he's 6'10". Rink Mast, he's a great player, but he's not a rebounder because he's pretty grounded. He's not a get off the floor guy. Um, but we showed that basket was ours. Those rebounds were ours, and we'll get into so many more of those stats here. But TKR especially, hats off to him. A+ performance. We needed that version of TKR, and we need that TKR. We need that effort. We need that poise. We need that nastiness without attitude. That's what it was. It was nastiness without attitude because he was aggressive. He was going to the ball. Every rebound was his. And there was one I think Fletch took from him that, you could tell he was going up for it until the very end and Fletch pulled it away. He wanted every single rebound that he was even remotely near. That's the Trey Kaufman-Renn that we need going forward against, especially a team like Michigan. If we face Illinois again, against those teams, I don't care if they're a great offensive rebounding team or Nebraska who doesn't really care about it. That's who we need. But speaking of the other half of our front court in rebounding, Oscar Clough, 12 points on 5 of 9 shooting, 2 for 5 from the free throw line, 14 rebounds, 2 assists, a turnover, and 2 blocks, which is big for him. This, again, is the Clough that we need to see. He looked so much more active right out the gate. I said very first possession was an Oscar Clough offensive rebound. Out of his 14 rebounds, so TKR reeled in every defensive rebound known to man, seemingly. Oscar Clough had 10 offensive rebounds. So he just found himself in the paint, getting the position and going up after every offensive rebound that he possibly could. And we'll talk about some of those offensive and defensive rebounding percentages individually with some of the advanced analytics. But those two guys, 33 rebounds between the two of them, which, by the way, Nebraska had 37 total. We almost rebounded them with 2 guys. It was incredible. It was incredible to watch it. I noticed at least TKR's rebounds because I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, like he had, I think it was 7 at half. And then as the second half began, I was like, oh my gosh, that's 8, that's 9, 10, 11, 12. And he just kept piling them on. And again, we needed every one of them. But it was great to see Oscar Clough come back and have a strong performance like that because I've been talking about it a lot recently. Kind of a bit of no-show. He hasn't seen that aggression. We hadn't been getting him the ball inside, so he wasn't really having much of that opportunity in offense other than, a lot of, he was trying to at least do kind of those tip-out offensive rebounds. He looked like the non-conference Oscar Clough in this one. Same way that Trey Kaufman-Renn looked like the non-conference Trey Kaufman-Renn that dominated the Alabama game. Those two guys were the major benefactors of this game. And I think Oscar Clough even got the KenPom MVP, which is given to a guy just kind of, KenPom just gives an MVP to every game based on the stats, their impact, all that type of thing. But now we get to the backcourt plus CJ Cox. So we'll talk about CJ here first. 11 points on 4 of 13 shooting, not super efficient. 3 for 10 from 3, so he got a lot of shots up. 0 for 2 from the free throw line. Those two, as I talked about, those 2 free throws hurt. Definitely wouldn't liked those. 2 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, and a turnover. As much as 3 for 10 is not fantastic, those 3 came at very crucial times. 2 of those down the stretch in the second half and 1 in overtime. Those threes felt like they could be worth 4 or 5 points when they went in. So those were big time. And again, regardless of how many threes you make in a game, keep stepping up, keep shooting them confidently. And we'll talk about that with some of these other guys too, because no one shot particularly efficiently for Purdue. We just had so many possessions because of those rebounds. But again, good to see him knock some shots down, getting double figures. He's been a little quiet recently too. Braden Smith plays 40 out of the 45 minutes, 13 points on 5 of 15 shooting, 3 for 9 from 3, 0 for 1 from the free throw line. Again, really would have loved those free throws. 8 rebounds, 10 assists, 2 steals, a block, and a turnover. Man, for a game that we rebounded so unbelievably well, the fact that Braden still had 8 rebounds and was 2 rebounds away from his first career triple-double, I was thinking, maybe this could be the game when I saw how balanced he was, and then when we went in overtime. But he ends up falling just a little bit short. Not his best offensive performance in case or in the lens of efficiency, 5 of 15 and the 3 for 9 from three, so he was 33% across the board. A lot of those buckets, or a couple of those buckets, came early. He had 7 quick ones for Purdue. And then down the stretch, he started trying to take a few more shots, trying to stifle some of Nebraska's runs. Some of them knocked in, a lot of them didn't, which is kind of how he ended up on that 33%. But the big thing in this one was the 10 assists to 1 turnover. He'd been turning the ball over a lot recently. He held on to the ball, kept the turnovers at a minimum, which helped us as a team keep the turnovers to a, pretty much minimum. 11 turnovers as a team, which I'll mention later, of course, with the team stats. But when you play 45 minutes, there's bound to be grounds for a fair couple of turnovers. So I was not upset with Braden's performance at all. It's very hard to be upset with a near triple double. And then our leading scorer, Fletcher Lawyer, 18 points on 5 of 20 shooting, 4 for 17 from 3. 4 for 5 from the free throw line, 3 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal, a turnover. But 4 for 17 from 3. For anybody who had been asking for more Fletcher Lawyer shots, you got him. He knocked a couple down early. I think we said he had 2 of them in that early stretch run. He had, I believe, 1 in the second half and 1 in overtime. I want to say he went 1 for 9 or something like that in the second half, and I think he was 1 for 5 in overtime. That's the thing. None of them were particularly bad shots. I'm not going to get upset at him shooting open shots. And given how he's been shooting lately, I'm not going to say, oh, you needed to make the adjustment and get him out of there. He was still knocking down shots. He was making good decisions outside of his shooting. He wasn't necessarily a complete defensive liability. So I'm not upset with the shooting. Definitely would have liked if he made a couple more. If he makes a couple more, if anybody makes a couple more, this is an entirely different game. But overall, still good to see him get to near 20, which he loves, averaging just about 20 points against Nebraska. So that's no real surprise. This time it just took him a lot more shots. But just kind of touching the bench here, we got Jack Benter with 7 points, 2 of 5 from shooting, 1 for 3 from 3, a couple of free throws, 4 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals, 2 turnovers. 3 of those 4 rebounds being offensive rebounds, Jack Benter, including that one where he got the offensive rebound, or no, that was one of his steals actually. The steal in the backcourt and the quick timeout before falling out of bounds. He again was an electric force, maybe not showing up in a crazy amount on the stat sheet, but those 3 offensive rebounds were huge. Those 2 steals were huge. He was able to knock down 1 of 3 threes. So again, a valuable 19 minutes out of him, even without the scoring. Jakari Harris also had 7, 2 of 4 shooting, 1 for 3 from 3. He had a steal and a turnover, as well as 2 free throws. Those 2 free throws right at the end to extend us from a 1-point lead to a 3-point lead to finish off the game. Again, he looked confident enough. He didn't get too many opportunities, but I can't be too upset with that. And Omer knocked down his 1 3. He was 1 for 4, but he knocked down a pretty crucial 3 there in the second half for his only 3 points. And then he had 3 points from Jacobson. Jacobson only played 5 minutes because Clough was looking good. We went with Clough a lot, and then to kind of try to stifle some of Nebraska's run, we actually did shuffle Trey down to the 5 for a little bit. And took Clough off. So he only had 35 minutes out of the 45 combined from Clough and Jacobson. And those other 10 minutes were taken up by TKR at the 5. So overall, heading into the team stats, those rebounds allowed us to have 76 shots. We were 28 for 76, though. 37% from the floor. Probably one of our worst overall percentage shooting nights on the season. Maybe Iowa State was worse. I'd have to go back and check. That one was just kind of brutal. And part of it was because we shot 46 threes. We looked like an Alabama team out there in terms of layup or 3, nothing else. When we got shots in the mid-range, whether it was a Braden Smith jumper, or it was a TKR short roll, the one or two times that he got that, it looked great. But other than that, it was at the rim in the first half or from three in the second half. And it was pretty nuts in that capacity. We were 13 for 46, 28% from three. So again, we made 13 threes, but we were nowhere near efficient. Speaking of nowhere near efficient, I mentioned the free throws. We were 11 for 20 from the free throw line, 55%. You talk, Trey missed his one. You had three misses from Clough. He was 2 for 5. The two misses from CJ Cox were brutal. He's a good free throw shooter. The one from Braden in the front half of the 1-on-1, that was brutal. Then you had one miss from Fletch, one miss from Jacobson while he was in. But again, if you make your free throws, an entirely different game. And as much as I say that about our threes, free throws I feel like are much more controllable and much more like you should have those. Even in a hostile environment, I get it's a lot tougher, but you need to have those to beat great teams. And we, quite frankly, got lucky that we were able to miss that many free throws and still beat them, quite frankly, because Nebraska shot pretty poorly from the free throw line as well. But I mentioned rebounds. We had 54 rebounds. 21 of them were offensive rebounds. 21 offensive rebounds. That's why we're able to get so many possessions. 21 offensive rebounds is insane. I would be astonished if we reach that number at all in the rest of the season. That was the game changer because we were shooting so inefficiently. It allowed for that many offensive rebounds, but to come down with those allowed us to win the rebounding battle and get that many more opportunities. And because we were active on the glass, that pretty much was that was the game. That was the game changer, which is why I keep praising this front court because the front court won us the game. I don't care that Braden and Fletcher were the ones that combined for, 31 points. Our front court won us this game on the glass for sure. 21 assists as a team, 11 turnovers as a team, 8 steals was good to see. That allowed us to get out and transition a little bit more. That turned into only 7 fast break points, but 19 points off turnovers. And the 19 points off turnovers is, I think, more important to highlight because we had 19 points off of their 14 turnovers. They had 16 points off of our 11 turnovers. So that was pretty crucial for us. So that was, another big time aspect of our game. But another thing that's very interesting to take a look at, I saw a stat at halftime. We had 20 points in the paint in the first half. It shows, we were able to slice them, dice them, get it into Clough, drive to the basket, stuff like that. We only ended up with 24 points in the paint for the game. So you talk about forcing us outside. We were entirely forced from the outside, especially when you think about the fact that 2 of those points in the paint were the game winner by Clough. So, yeah, tale of two halves on that side for sure in terms of how we played offense. But they outscored us in the paint with how they were able to dice us up in the second half and get inside. They had 28 points in the paint to our 24. So very interesting things to look at in terms of how this game completely, switched momentum wise, offensive style, the runs that went on, a lot of craziness. But going into the advanced analytics, the interesting one to highlight this time is, well, I talk about the BPM every game, but it's especially interesting to highlight this time. And to me, because it doesn't speak to some players' efficiency or especially their importance to this game because it's really just about points. When you look at like Braden being the highest in BPM at 14.3 and Jakari Harris behind him at 13.2, that doesn't to me speak to the importance of these guys in this game at all. Yes, Braden Smith was very important. Yes, Jakari Harris had some quality minutes off the bench when he did get some playing time. But it was everywhere else. So it's interesting to see, BPM only tells a part of the story because it really focuses it's on the offensive side of the ball. But another thing I want to focus on is the assist percentage. Braden Smith with a 49.8% assist percentage. That means that he assisted on half of the baskets that were made while he was on the floor. That is the type of playmaker or the playmaking ability that we need from him and the type of playmaker we need him to be. And he was able to be very efficient with it in this game as opposed to being a little reckless in some other games, trying to force things, just assuming the passes are going to be there. He played in especially poised, especially composed game in this one to be able to, navigate Nebraska's defense, especially in the first half, when things were a bit easier, slicing through those hard hedges, but also in the second half when he got pushed out and had to, try to figure out how to adjust from there. Um, Now we go to the rebounding percentages, like I mentioned earlier. TKR's defensive rebound percentage, 55.9%. That is wild. That means that I believe that stat specifically is, let me see if I can find it. Okay, yeah, so defensive rebound percentage is an estimate of the percentage of available defensive rebounds a player grabbed while they were on the floor. That means that when Trey Kaufman-Renn was on the floor, he grabbed 56% of every defensive rebound that happened. It was over a 50-50 chance that the ball was going to him when Nebraska shot and missed. That to me is nuts. I don't know what a good defensive rebound percentage is supposed to be, but 55.9% is crazy. That just means it just shows just how unbelievably aggressive and he made an incredible concerted effort to go after the ball on the defensive end. Same way that Clough went after it on the offensive end. He had a 30.3% offensive rebound percentage, which is the same thing except for offense percentage, estimated percentage of available offensive rebounds a player grabbed while they were on the floor. That means out of any offensive rebounding chance, Clough was getting it almost a third of the time. That is the elite offensive rebounder that we recruited to come in through the transfer portal. That is the Oscar Clough that is a difference maker in our team. And that, of course, leads into, our team defensive and offensive rebounding percentage. 88.9% on the defensive side. That's amazing. That just shows that we kept them off the glass almost entirely. Like I said before, in one of our previous recaps, if you can aim for over 80%, that means that, 4 out of 5 times the ball's coming down to you. You obviously want more than that, but against a lot of teams, that's going to be a good percentage. Well, we dominated the boards to almost a 90% tune there on the defensive end. And then 40% on the offensive rebounding side. That's insane. That means on the offensive end, we were getting closer to a 50-50 shot that we would get the offensive rebound when we missed a shot. And we missed a lot of shots. That's why we came down with 21 offensive rebounds. So really just shows there just how much rebounding really was the thing that won this game. And it was a good thing. It was a great thing to see because, again, how do you find ways to win when the shots aren't falling? We may have gotten to 80 points, but this was, quite frankly, a horrible shooting night. We won, but this game was a horrible shooting night against a really good team. We should not have been able to win a game like this, except for the rebounding. And of course, taking care of the ball. Only 11 turnovers, that's good. But without those extra opportunities, that comeback would have happened a lot quicker for Nebraska, and they probably would have gotten more points if we didn't get, as many of those defensive rebounds, and we certainly wouldn't have got anywhere near as many of those points as we didn't if we didn't get those offensive rebounds. So again, the game was won on the glass, and that's going to happen in a lot of games, especially in some of these games coming up against great rebounding teams like a Michigan State and a Michigan. The game is going to be won on the glass. This is the type of performance that we need, but it was just a wild game that got my heart rate all the way up for many, many minutes watching the crumble in the second half and throughout the entirety of overtime. But it was still an amazing win for the team, especially for the slim Big Ten title hopes. A lot of things would still have to fall into place for that to be able to happen. But the goal is still to win out regardless of Big Ten title chances. And again, play your best basketball going into the Big Ten tournament, going into the NCAA tournament, and it's going to be great experience against some of these great teams that we've got coming up. And speaking of that, coming up next, the Boilers will get a rematch with the Iowa Hawkeyes, who gave us a solid test in Mackey. So we'll take them on this Saturday for a Valentine's Day Classic as we try to keep the wins coming, and the Hawkeyes try to bounce back from a brutal loss at Maryland Wednesday night. But that's all I've got for today. The grind continues as this is only the beginning of the heart of Purdue's stretch run heading into March. I'll be here for every game, and I hope that you will too. But if you want more from us, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, I'm out.